You were talking about the little treats that your mom made in Puerto Rico with the ice and coconut.
Very few people. I think we were the first people to have a refrigerator, and probably one of the first that had electricity, I'm sure. But before that, there was no electricity, no nothing. And my mother used to make this thing that the refrigerator had these trays that had a metal divider in the middle that you pulled up if you wanted to take them out, and if you pulled back down if you wanted to make the little square frozen whatever the flavor was that my mother could get. And
did it have coconut?
Yeah, they had
and sugar,
coconut, and if sometimes we could find sugar, and sometimes we had like cane syrup or something like that. That there were neighbors that had these little hand presses that you could put the cane in there and they squash it and bring the syrup down in a container. It was all homemade stuff. You know, nobody had money to go. They didn't have stores that sold anything. So they had to make everything at home. And they would just bring flavors and, you know, coconut milk and lemons and oranges and squashed up mangoes and whatever.
What did they call it?
Huh?
What did you kids call it?
Lindbergh, for some weird reason.
But you're all Spanish. You're Puerto Rican. What? It's Puerto Rico.
English.
But it's English, yeah. Lindbergh.
Lindbergh is the guy who did the airplane.
Yes, and
So why
Charles Lindbergh.
Why they call them Lindberghs, I have no idea.
There's a story of the Lindberghs.
No, pero te decía una cosa. Los niños, los muchachos, iban y Doña Marta tiene Lindbergh. You know, so everybody would come to my mother's house, and they would sit on the back steps and wait.
Tia Marta.
Uh-huh. And it was like, okay, whatever.
To the Lindberghs.
And my daddy used to bring
Don Pepe.
He had a car, and nobody had a car. And my daddy used to have what they call un carro público, meaning a car that he used in
a taxi.
public.
Yeah, a taxi.
It wasn't a taxi.
Well, basically.
El carro público, el carro de Don Pepe.
The very first, well, you call it the car riding, or I forget. Anyway.
What was it?
Well, I was thinking of carpool. That's what it is.
No, this was for money.
Oh.
People scraped up 10 cents to go to town.
So he was a taxi.
Huh?
So he was a taxi.
It wasn't a taxi. It was Don Pepe's car.
Okay, fine. All right, fine.
You don't call him a taxi,
Yes, ma'am.
he would be upset.
Love you.
But he would give anybody rides who needed them. My dad never had any money because he gave everything away.
Oh.
You know, if anybody needed to go to town and they didn't have any money, he'd take them. So it was like,
Awesome.
whatever. And whenever he would come home. My daddy drove a public car, and people paid if they had the money, and they rode for free if they didn't have the money.
Ah,
And he would take them to town or to the doctor or whatever they needed. That was Don Pepe's car, man. He was God Almighty. And then he would give him rides to anybody who didn't have money. And they would, he would go, whenever he came home from being in town, he would go to the stores and buy all the old bread and cookies and whatever they had that they didn't want to sell, and he would bring it home with him. And whenever the kids and some of the grown-ups too saw Don Pepe's car, everybody came to my house. We had this little cement house with some steps on the back, and everybody very quietly, very nicely would sit and wait for Don Pepe to give away the goodies.
oh,
And he did. He had whatever the bakery had, the stores had too much of, he would buy it sometimes, or they would give it to him, and he would give it away. And he did that all the time, And then again, when the refrigerator came, my mother used to sell the ice cubes.
smart.
And I thought, oh, that was incredible. She used to flavor the stuff with whatever she had, like brown sugar and evaporated milk and things like that. She would put them in these little trays and freeze them. And then the kids called them Lindberghs for some reason, which I never have been able to figure out. And
Lindberghs. Wow, that's the story of the Lindberghs.
yeah, and it made everybody happy. The kids were happy. My mama was happy. Pepe was in heaven. Yeah, so. What was that?